I think we're good to go. Hopefully you can see everything all right. This card is tonight's project. If you ordered the card kit, I would have sent you everything you need to make tonight's card. If you ordered $50 of product from me in the month of March, you would have got the card kit for free. So thinking about May, by the end of the week, I'll be putting up the projects for May. And if you want those kits, you can order them. There'll be 3 kits. The first 3 Mondays of the month, I'll be doing kits. There'll be 2 cards. The third one next month, instead of a project, we're going to do a fun fold card, which will be really fun. So I'll have that posted by the end of the week, what those are going to look like. And you can purchase all 3 kits for $30 or for $25, or you can do them individually for $10. So each kit alone, standalone, is $10. If you order all 3, you get a little break and you can do it for $25. If you order from me in the month of April, a $50 or more order, I will send you the May kits for free. So that's just a heads up of how we're going to do. This is the first month that I'm doing Stamp and Share, so hopefully we'll learn some things as we go. Just one little housekeeping thing as we go through the project tonight. If you have a question, if you could type that in all caps, that might draw my attention that it's a question instead of a comment, because I want to make sure that I do answer any questions that you have. So I'm going to give you, before we get into tonight's, each week I'm going to try to make sure these are no longer than an hour. Tonight's will be well under an hour. We won't even be close to an hour. But I want to give you a sneak peek of the stamp set that is going to be our feature for the month of May. We are going to feature the Hydrangea Haven stamp set. So if you're thinking ahead to May and wondering what we're going to do, all 3 projects that we do for the month of May will use this stamp set. So I will put more information later in the week. There's also a corresponding die set. You can bundle the 2 together and save 10%. But this is what we're going to be using for the month of May. So just a heads up on that. So let's look at tonight's card. And if you didn't get the kits, you can always just craft along, make a card that you want to make. Maybe you're not a card maker and you like to crochet. You're welcome to join in and we can chat with each other, share comments with each other, just a time to have some fellowship and just be able to get together and do something just fun. So let's look at tonight's card. We're going to do this happy birthday card, and the projects this month are featuring the Timeless Tulips set. This is the stamp set, and this is a polymer stamp. What that means is that they're the clear plastic. If it says cling, that's the rubber stamps. If it says polymer, it's these clear plastic stamps. So that's what this month's set is. There is also a punch available to go with this set, and I'm going to use the punch tonight. If you ordered the kit, I would have already punched these for you, and so you'll have the tulip and the leaf already punched and in your kit, and so you'll just need to stamp them. So let's talk about what else you need for this card. Maybe you already had the items, so you're just needing me to tell you what you need to make the card with us. So let's look at those things. I used another die set. For the little sentiment tag, I used the Tasteful Labels die, and we're just using this little banner right here. And then I also used the Stitched Rectangles die set. I used this fourth smallest one for the white layer that we're going to stamp on. And then the other addition that I used, and I love this folder. This is a 3D embossing folder, and I just love this folder. I've used it so much. This is retiring. When the new catalog comes out the first week of May, this will be retired. So if you like this folder, You definitely want to order this in the month of April because it is going away. And I use this one a lot. This is my favorite embossing folder. You might want to check out my YouTube channel. I'm going to spend 1 week featuring this and do a project with this. I use this for a lot of projects, and I used it for tonight's project as well. So this is an embossing folder. So here's the card, and just kind of monochromatic in that we layered purple on top of purple. Having the embossing layer just gives it a really cool effect. So let's talk about the different pieces that we need to put this together. If you have a kit, you'll want to pull these out and set out. The kit would have had enough to make 4 of this card, so you're going to want to pull out 1 of each thing and have ready to make for the card. So the first thing is the card base, and this is Highland Heather cardstock. And this piece is 8.5 by 5.5 and scored at 4 1/4. If you got the card kit, I would have already scored that for you. If you're following along with me now, you just want to cut it 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4 1/4. If your cardstock that you're working with is an 8.5 by 11, you're just gonna cut it in half. And so that will get you your standard card base. Then this layer is 4 by 5 1/4. And this is the layer that I ran through the embossing folder with the embossing folder to get this tin tile look on there. And on this particular one, I didn't do anything extra to it. I kept it as it is. You'll notice that I have some cards that I've posted where I've taken the shimmer paint and went over it to give it an added touch. That's something you can do. You can, before you emboss, you can sponge some ink on the embossing folder to get some different colors. That's another option that you can change the looks if you're making the other 3 that came in your card kit and you want to do something a little different. That would be an idea of something different that you could do. You could play around with that a little bit. But we're going to need that. That's going to be our layer, our matte layer. And then you're going to want to cut out of basic white that rectangle that I showed you. Here's the rectangle piece. And that's where we're going to do our stamping. And we'll be doing that in just a moment, but go ahead and die cut that piece. You'll see that it has the stitching around it. And that's what we're going to be using. And then you'll want to go ahead and die cut your little sentiment banner. And I showed you the die on that. If you got the kit, all this die cutting was done for you. They're in your kit. You just need to pull them out. I see that I got stuff sticking in my camera a little bit. My workspace is kind of cramped, so I apologize that there's stuff at the top of my stamping area. Then we're also going to need a piece of the basic white. This is 5 1/4 by 4, and this just goes on the inside. Now tonight we're not going to do any decoration on the inside, but I think it's always really special if you do something special on the inside. You could stamp your sentiment and still have room to write. You could stamp some of the tulips on the inside. I always like to do something personal, but a lot of times I will leave that till I get ready to mail it because I don't know what I want to do with it until then. So we're just going to put in the blank piece, and then you'll have that you could decorate later when you get ready to give the card out. And then you'll need a piece of basic white, just a scrap. And that's what you're going to, if you're following along and you don't have the card kit, this is what you're going to use to stamp your tulip and your leaf on, and then you're going to punch out. Now, if you didn't get the card kit, so you don't have the punched out pieces, you could always fussy cut. And what I mean by that is, when you stamp the image, you could always take your scissors and cut around the stamped image if you do not have the punch. So there's that option as well. And then we're going to use some of these jewels, which is going to go down the side here. So we'll need these. And then we're also going to use this gray, let me see if I can see, gray granite ribbon. It's got a nice little shine to it, and we're going to put that on. That's going to go on that layer, and we're going to do the knot on that. So you should also have in your kit some of this gray granite ribbon. Okay? So I'm not seeing any questions, so I'm assuming that we're good to go ahead and start with the putting the card together. At the end of tonight's video, I'm going to do a sneak peek for next week's card. If you got the kit, you already know what we're doing, but I'm going to go ahead and give you a sneak peek. Okay, let's get started. So we're going to start with the card base, and we're going to go ahead and attach our embossed piece onto the card base. You can use whatever adhesive you have. If you have Stamp and Seal, this is pretty heavy duty. It will hold this easily. Another good way is liquid glue. Liquid glue will hold it very nicely as well. The only thing that I would caution is some adhesives, if they're not heavy duty, they may be hard. It may be hard to hold the embossing. So that's just something to remember when you buy your adhesives. If you're going to use, sometimes it's good to have different types of adhesives, because some things hold other, some things will hold different types of pieces together better than others. So with this, I always either use my Stamp and Seal or my liquid glue to make sure that it holds. So we're going to go ahead, and if you're working with me tonight, you want to go ahead and put your adhesive on the back of your embossed piece. Okay. And I'm just going to go around all the edges. And if you have to leave or something before the live is done tonight, I am going to post the video on Facebook, so you'll be able to watch it there as well. I see that we have a question about tear and tape. Tear and tape is an awesome alternative. Tear and tape, it will hold it very nicely. So that's an awesome alternative as well. So this piece is 5 1/4 by 4. One side of our card base is 5 1/2 by 4 1/4. So you only have 1/4 inch across and 1/4 inch top to bottom. So you're only going to have an eighth of an inch all the way around. So when you're holding this, when you're getting ready to put this on, and it depends which is easier for you. For some, it might be easier to line the straight at the top, making sure that you have equidistance at the bottom and at the top. For some, it might be easier to turn it this way and line it up across the longer edge. Whichever works better for you is the way you want to do it. And you just want to kind of make sure you have equidistance. Sometimes with the card base, it can be hard to see that fold line to know where you need to put this. So if you want to crease that so you can see that fold, if that helps you, you can definitely do that. That's not going to hurt anything. Okay, so we're just going to go ahead, and that looks like it's pretty well equal distance. And if I get my head in the camera, I apologize. I'm just trying to make sure I get it straight. Okay, and then just go ahead and press down. Okay, and then we're just going to set this aside, and we're going to do some stamping. I'm going to bring in our little rectangle, and we're going to stamp our stem on this. And because my stem is going to come off the bottom a little bit, let me get the finished card to show you. The stem comes off the bottom, so I just put a little piece of just scratch paper underneath so that to protect my surface. It depends on what kind of surface you're working on. If you're working on a silicone mat, that easily cleans up so you don't have the problem as well as, you know, as easily. If you're working on like a wood table, you're probably not going to want to get ink on that. So put a piece of scrap paper. Another tip, if you're, you know, if this is all new to you, you'll definitely want some kind of foam. This is the foam that came with my Stamparatus, and I'm going to show you the Stamparatus here in a little bit. I also keep, let me find my piece of foam. I always keep, this is just a foam sheet that you can put like in an envelope, like for packing. This is another alternative, something spongy, something, because the polymer stamps, you want something spongy underneath. Another option, if you have it, is this is a piercing mat. When you do paper piercing, that will work. Just whatever you have that's a little bit spongy will be good for putting under this when you go to stamp, okay? And I'm just going to line it up like that. This is something I don't care if I get ink on, so it doesn't matter. So you're going to want to get out your green ink, and you could use any green you want. There's no, it doesn't have to be a specific green. I'm using garden green. It could be any of the green values depending on what look you're going for. And we're going to bring out our stamp. Now, if you have the stamp set, you'll notice that there's two different types of stems. There's one that's a rounded, and there's one that's a straight. We're going to be using the straight, but I do want to show you something about the rounded one. While you're getting your straight one on your block and getting ready to stamp, I want to show you this on the rounded one. I'm going to pull mine off for a minute. This is the normal way that it bends. But these polymer stamps, you can bend them any way you want. So let's say you want it to curve the other way. You can definitely bend it and put it on your block so it curves the other way. That's what's really cool about the polymers. You have a lot of ability to change it up depending on the design that you're going for. So I just wanted to show you that with the polymer. So I'm going to go back to my straight one, and I'm going to put this on here. Now, I've got, you could use your stamp. Why don't I just use my stamp? So we're going to be using the big tulip tonight. And what you're going to want to figure out is where you're going to want your tulip to be, because you only want your leaf to go under your tulip. So how high up your stem is going to go depends on where you want your tulip. Do you want your tulip closer to the top? Do you want it more in the middle? How much room do you want between your tulip and the top of your rectangle? If you look at the one that I did, the sample one, I bring it pretty close to the top. It's all in what you want, what design you're looking for, how much stem you want to show. The only thing I would caution is make sure you have it high enough that you have room for your ribbon and your sentiment. If you don't have that much space, if you make your stem too short, this is going to be right up against the bottom of your flower. So when you're deciding how much stem, keep that in mind. What I did is I kind of went to about a little higher than the middle. Here's another thing about this. When we go to put this piece on, we can cover part of the stem up. So as long as we don't get it too high or too low, we do have some play with it, okay? So you're going to want to go ahead and ink up. Now, if the color green that you have let's say, and I would recommend that you, on your scrap paper, just go ahead and stamp it to see what it looks like. If you're okay with that color, then you're good. If you think that color's too dark, there's a way to lighten it. And I'm just going to get my scrap towel because I've got some green on the side of my block. So you can always just wipe that off. Okay, so if I think that's too dark, let me get that up in the camera for you. If I think that's too dark and I really want a lighter green, but this is the only green I don't have a lighter green ink, what I can do before I stamp on my piece, I can stamp off on paper so that when I stamp the one on my project, it's lighter. Can you see the difference in those two? How one's darker and one's lighter. It just depends on what you want it to look like. So you can always get it lighter. And I think actually think to go with the purple, I do like the lighter one. So I'm going to ink up. And I'm going to stamp on my paper to take some of the ink off. And then I'm going to stamp on the project. And I have a little more green on the corner of that block, so I'm going to take that off. And so then I'm just going to stamp it in the middle. There you go. And you've got your stem. Okay, so I'm going to set that aside and I'm going to go ahead and close my green ink up. I am notorious about sticking my hand in my ink. If I don't close it when I'm done, I will end up with ink all over me. So I'm going to go ahead and close my ink up. Now we're going to set that aside, and I want you to get your little sentiment piece out. That's your little banner piece. Now a lot of times I will stamp this before I die cut it, but because I was putting the die cut piece in the kits to keep you from having to have so many different sets and still being able to do the project, I went ahead and die cut these for you. So we're stamping on the die cut piece. So you're going to need your Highland Heather ink, which is what I'm using. You could definitely use whatever color you have, but this is what I'm using tonight, is the Highland Heather. And if you are new to Stampin' Up! Stamp pads, all you do is pinch, put your thumbs on the back of the pad and push down, and you'll hear it click, and then you're able to just pop it open and slide that in, just like that. Okay, so I've got my happy birthday on my block. Okay, and I'm going to ink this up. And you're just going to want to, and if I go too fast, please, somebody put a comment saying, slow down, slow down. I can always slow down. So then you're just going to try to put it in a straight line, and you're going to center it between the two ends. Okay? So you're just going to push it down. And there's our happy birthday. Okay? Okay. So I'm just going to set that aside. And then I'm going to show you the way that I'm going to show you a couple options for doing the flower, the tulip, and the leaf. So if you got the kit, what you received was, you received the tulip and the leaf already punched out for you. So you're going to be just stamping directly on these pieces. You're going to stamp your tulip directly on here with your Highland Heather, and you're going to stamp your leaf with your green. That's all you're going to do. If you're working with the punch, here's what I do. if you notice, the punch is preset. Here's going to be your leaf. Here's going to be your tulip. And rather than stamping my tulip, fitting it in here, punching it, and then stamping my leaf and punching it, and you know, you can probably waste more cardstock trying to do it that way. Here's an easy way to do it. I punched a template, and I keep this right in my stamp kit. This is the negative space where I punched out some of the flowers. It's the negative space. And I keep this right in my stamp kit. So here's what I can do. Let me get the Stamparatus. And if you don't have a Stamparatus, I know this is a little bit more of a pricier item, but it really is. I mean, it has been for me a lifesaver many times. And I'm going to get my pad that goes with it. And if you're stamping directly onto the pieces that are already die cut, you can just hang loose for a minute and just watch what I'm doing, okay? So I'm just going to take my magnets off, and I'm going to put my foam piece in, and I'm going to get my template. Now, I haven't used the stamps yet, so there's no ink on them. I don't have to worry about getting ink on them. And I'm just going to lay my tulip inside the die cut. Okay? And then I'm going to take my leaf, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to lay it inside my die cut. What this is going to do, it's going to give me the perfect spacing. So if I will die cut, if I will stamp them just like this, then when I go to put it in my punch, it's going to be the exact right spacing for my punch. So all you have to do at this point, close the lid to your Stamparatus, pull it up, remove that negative piece, and you're ready to stamp. The only downfall to that is if you have them both on there, now you got a problem of inking. So now that I rethink that, I would do one at a time. So let me get my scrap piece of paper, my scrap white that we're going to die cut. And I'm just going to put my magnet on there to hold it down. And we're just going to do the rose or the tulip first. Okay? So if you're working with the punched pieces, just hang on. If you've got your pieces already punched, just pull out the tulip one. Put your large tulip on your block. I'm going to do it using the Stamparatus so I can show how this spaces. Okay? So take your Highland Heather and go ahead and, I'm going to make sure I get this in the camera, go ahead and ink up your tulip. Now, if you're doing this on the block, you're just going to put your block in it just like we did the other things. If you're doing it with the Stamparatus, you're going to do it like this. And always wipe off anything that gets on your glass so that it doesn't transfer to your paper. The other thing that's nice about the Stamparatus, if it's not dark enough, you can always stamp right back in the same place a second time. Okay? So I'm just going to close this and I'm going to press down. So if you're doing it on the die cut piece, just press it down right on your piece and it will stamp. Okay, there I have my tulip. So now I'm going to come back with my leaf. If I can figure out how my leaf goes in here. Okay, So just put your leaf in that negative space. Again, if you already have the die cut piece, you're just going to put your leaf on a block. And I'm just going to close this. I'm going to go ahead and close up my Highland Heather ink and get out my green ink. So you're going to ink up your leaf. Okay. And then if you're using the die cut piece, go ahead and stamp it on the die cut piece. If you're doing this along with me, you're just going to shut your lid. Now, because I stamped off on the stem, I'm going to want to stamp off with this as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put my paper in here and I'm going to stamp off once, and I'm not going to re-ink it. And I'm just going to then place it down and stamp so that my leaf isn't way darker than my stem. Okay? And I'm going to take this out of here. Now I should be able to, if you are using the die cut pieces, you're just going to hold for a moment. If you have the punch, you're just going to take your punch. Now I have a lot of extra down here. It's not going to fit in the punch that way, so I'm just going to cut across there. So it will fit my punch. And then you can just line it up. And you can see that there's perfect spacing between the leaf and the flower because of the way we did that. Okay? So you're just going to line it up. This is always hard to do when you're not, you know, when you're doing it yourself, you're right over it. When you're doing it on a camera, you can't put your head right over it because then the people that you're filming for can't see. So I am going to eventually get it lined up where I want it. It's really not this difficult. I'm making it way harder than it needs to be. Oh my goodness. Okay. I've never had this much problems with this punch. But I can tell you the whole concept of a Facebook Live is new to me. You know, the younger generation, they're so tech savvy, it's nothing to them. But for us older people, it can be a little bit of a challenge. So I'm learning tech. I'm learning to be more tech savvy. Okay. So now we've got those pieces together. So we're going to bring back our card base. And the next thing we want to do you know what? Now that I look at this, I messed us up. But I think we can fix it. So I think we can pull up the bottom of your, now if you did with the tear and tape, I hope you can still do it. If not, we can just go around the white piece. We can put the gray ribbon just around the white piece. So if you're able to lift this piece up a little bit, then do that. If you're not, then you're just going to put it around the white piece. I think I can get mine. So you're going to cut a piece of the ribbon that's just a little wider than your embossed piece. And we're going to go ahead, if you're able to lift that up, then you're going to follow just exactly what I'm doing. If you're not able to lift it up, then you just want to do this around the white piece, okay? But I'm able to lift mine up, so hopefully you can lift yours up. I can always add more adhesive underneath. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put adhesive on my white piece, and I'm going to center that on the card base. So I'm just going to put the adhesive on the back of here. One thing about the lives, you can't hide your oopses. You know, when you're doing a video, you can always re-tape and then and cut and splice. But when you're doing a live, it's live. Okay, so I'm just going to center this in the middle and press down. And I just got ink all over that piece. So mine's going to have an ink smear on it. Hopefully yours will not. I'm going to take my sand eraser and see. That's always a good thing to have on hand, is a sand eraser, because you can erase off your little ink smudges. Make sure you get the sand eraser for ink. And I'm just going to rub that off. This is a crazy night. Okay, now I'm going to take, this is really making it harder than it needed to be, because if I would have instructed us to do this before, we would have been able to have this really easily. We're just going to wrap this around, and you've already got adhesive back there, so you're just going to wrap it around your purple piece and stick it to the back. And then you're going to adhere that back down. Now we can add the knot at the end. We're okay like this for now. We can add the knot at the end. Okay? So, in your kit, you should have had dimensionals. Dimensionals are these little pieces of foam that have adhesive on them. They're in a hexagon shape. We're going to use those to adhere the tulip and the leaf to the card base. So you just want to take a few of the dimensionals and put on the back of your tulip. I'm going to use 2. If you feel better using more, you can use more. And I'm just going to place this on the top of my stem. And this is where I said, you know, you could move it up or down depending on how you want your tulip to be. Okay. So then we're going to place our leaf on there. And we're going to do the same thing with the leaf. We're going to add some dimensionals on the back. Because and for this I'm only going to put 1 on there. Because we want to pop it up off of the card a little bit. And what I did is I tucked the corner of it underneath the ribbon and let it come up off of the stem that way. Okay? Now we want our little sentiment strip, and we're going to put dimensionals on it. And I just put one at each end. You could put 3 across there if you wanted. I tend to put, if I know I'm going to mail it and it's got to hold up to going through the machine at the post office, I would probably put another one there so it didn't sag, the machine didn't make it sag. If I'm hand delivering it, then of course I can get by with less. So then I'm going to take my happy birthday and I'm going to center it across the ribbon and press that down. Okay, and we're really almost done. And then we're going to cut another piece of the ribbon, and this doesn't need to be a real big piece. We can trim off. If we cut too much, we can trim off. So I'm just going to cut a small piece. And I'll say this, I have a little pair of snips that are only for my ribbon. My gray handled snips are only for my ribbon. I have my black ones that I cut paper. I have my white ones, I have some with a white handle, and if I'm cutting something that has some sticky to it, I use my white handled ones. So I have different snips depending on what I'm cutting, so that, you know, if I use something sticky, if I have to cut something sticky, I don't want to turn around and get that on my ribbon. So I have different color handles, and I know my gray handle or my ribbon, my black or my paper, and my white or my sticky. Just a little helper there. Okay, so then you're going to take your little piece that you cut off, and you're just going to slide it underneath the ribbon that goes horizontal across your card. Okay? And I'm going to turn mine this way because I think it'll be easier to tie. You can do it whichever way is easier for you. And you're just going to tie a knot around that piece of ribbon that you already have on there. And then I'm going to come back with my snips, and I'm going to angle the ends. And I'm going to cut this one a little shorter. Now, if you want to make sure that the knot stays, you could take your liquid glue and go underneath the knot and put a little bit of glue or a glue dot. You could roll up a glue dot and stick it up under there and press down, and that will keep, you know, if you want that peace of mind that your knot is not going to come undone, you could do that. So now we're going to come back with our jewels. And I'm using the smaller ones here. And I'm just going to use 3 of them. And I'm just going to put them along. There's no right place or wrong place. I'm doing mine in a vertical line, 3 of them in a vertical line. You could put yours in different places on the card if you wanted to. And I'm just going to give them a little press to make sure they're on there pretty good. Front of the card's done. All we have left, make sure that I got my right piece. All we have left then is on your white piece for the inside is to put your adhesive on the back of that. Now you could, if you knew what you wanted to put on it, you could go ahead and decorate it up before you attach it. And I usually do, if I know, you know, what I want on there, I'll go ahead and stamp it because it's easier to stamp it before you attach it than afterwards. But on this particular card, I don't know what I want to do on the inside, so I'm just going to go ahead and attach it. And you're just going to try to line it up. and push it down. And then when you close your card, you want to come back with your bone folder and just kind of go along the edge and press it down. Now here's the one thing I don't like about the Facebook Live. You can see my card, but you can't share your card with me. So if you want to do a post on the page and post a picture of yours that you created tonight along with us, you could definitely do that. And I'm going to see how that's going across my sentiment. I'm just going to tuck that underneath there so that it's not covering up my sentiment. There. And that's all there is to it. This card is done. So if you got the kits, you have enough to make 3 additional cards. And you could make it exactly like this. You could change it up and do something different. That's the beauty of it. It can be your card. But that's our first Stamp and Share. We've got our first one done. Let me give you a preview of what we're going to do next week. Next week is going to be our Mother's Day card, and we're going to do this card. It's going to be the pinks. We're going to have pink ribbon, and we're going to do pink stamping, and we're going to feature the Rococo Rose. I will tell you this, Rococo Rose is retiring. So if you like this cardstock and you want to have some of it on hand, I did not use the Rococo Rose ink, but you definitely could. If you like those, you will want to go ahead and go to my website and order those, because those are retiring the first week in May as well. My website is karensmith.stampinup.net, and that's where you can find these products. Again, the stamp set we're going to be using all month long is the Timeless Tulips set. So next week we're going to do a Mother's Day card, and then if you look at the announcements here on the page, you'll see a picture of the project that we're going to do the 3rd week this month. So definitely join me. Come back next Monday and we'll craft again together. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you had a good time making this card or whatever you created tonight. So grab your coffee and your snack and come back next Monday and be ready to craft again, and we'll see each other then. Have a great evening.